What's up everyone? I'm Kevin with Victory 4x4. In this video, we're going to be installing our gas tank skid on our 2022 Toyota Tundra. So to get started, if your Tundra is equipped with this factory plastic skid, it will first need to be removed before ours can be installed. For that, you'll need a 12mm socket, and you can remove the 7 nuts holding this in place. Just make sure that you're supporting it as you take off those final couple nuts. Now this factory skid will not be reused, so you can discard it at this time. So then up here at the front of the tank, you can remove this bracket that was just holding the front of that factory skid in place. For that, you'll just need your 12 once again. It's just held in place with 2 bolts here on the frame. And just like that skid, this can be discarded as well. Now you're ready to grab the rear section of your skid and begin installing it here on the vehicle. So I just kind of stood it up so you can get a good look at what this section is. I'm going to be laying it down and jacking it up into place with our transmission jack here, since we're working under a hoist. If you're doing this on the ground with a set of jack stands and a floor jack, you can use the floor jack in a very similar fashion to kind of lift this up into place. Now there are a couple ways you can proceed from here. Since we have a lot of support from our trans jack keeping this thing stable, we're going to jack it up into place and then install the mounts one at a time after the fact. Now if you are doing this by yourself on the ground, for example, it may be easier to kind of hang the mounts from the frame up above this and then lift the skid into place, and that way you have something to bolt them to right away. With all that being said, if you're working on a TRD model like we have here, you're going to have these studs still sticking down from that factory plastic skid, which you can also use with the provided holes here in our skid to hold it up as well. So then it's just a matter of lifting this into place and beginning to line up those studs. So again, if yours is a TRD model and you are going to be reusing these studs, you can get the skid up here and use these factory nuts to just kind of hold this in place while you work on those brackets. Now, these factory studs are not going to be doing a whole lot once this skid is actually fully installed. It's going to be relying on our mounting brackets to hold everything in place. So the option you do have, if you're concerned about these hanging down and the nuts or the studs themselves dragging or getting damaged or ripped off, is you can actually cut these off out of place before the skid goes up in, and that'll leave you with a little bit more of a smooth surface here as you're going over obstacles. Now this next step could be done before or after the skid's up in place, but you'll need to find 2 3/8 clip nuts in your hardware pack. Those you'll be installing into the 2 outside holes here on your skid. Those should be able to just slide over this front flange and be lined up with those mounting holes. So the first bracket we'll be installing is the driver's side rear. You're going to be looking for the narrower slot to go up to the frame. The wider 1/2 inch slot will mount down here to the skid. So you can slide that up in kind of over top of this drive shaft in the front of the rear axle housing. Get that lined up down here on the skid. And then you'll install a 1/2 inch button head with a serrated flange nut up top to hold that in place. Then one of the M8 flange head bolts from your bolt pack is what you're going to be using to mount the top of this bracket, and that's going to thread into a factory threaded hole on that cross member. Now at this time, you don't need to worry about getting any of this too tight, because you'll want to leave this loose so you have a little bit of additional compliance as you're getting the rest of the brackets installed. Next, we'll install the passenger side rear bracket. Now before that can go in place, you'll need to remove this bolt here, which is the lower mounting bolt for this rear sway bar link bracket. For that, you'll need a 17mm socket. So then this will be the bracket you're installing here. You're going to want to slide this up inside of this flange here on our skid and then it will mount over top of that factory bracket there and reinstall using the factory bolt. And then just like on the driver's side, down here on the skid, you'll be installing 1/2-inch button heads with serrated flange nuts on the inside. Now you can grab the stepped front portion of the skid, and before this actually gets pushed up into place, you'll want to install the 2 outside or passenger side mounts to the skid itself. So we'll start with the front outside mount here. It's going to have 2 1/2-inch holes that correspond with the 2 slots here on this outside flange, and then just like the other mounting brackets up on the rear section, you'll be installing 1/2-inch button head hardware here. Now you're not going to have a lot of access to these nuts once this is pushed up into place, so you want to make sure they're tight enough that that serrated flange can catch and hold that nut as you're tightening the bolt, but you still want to have just a little bit of room to be able to adjust that mount. Then you can grab the rear mount for this skid section. It's going to be this one here, so it'll have 2 smaller slots that'll mount up to the frame, and then 1 1/2-inch slot to correspond with the 1 mounting hole out here on the side. So with this stepping up and out, again, grab one of those 1/2-inch button heads to hold it in place. Now, again, using our trans jack, we're going to lift this into place, and I'll start by lining up the 2 mounting holes on this front section with those 2 clip nuts we just installed on the rear half. So once you have the back of this lined up, you'll need the 2 3/8 button heads from your bolt pack, and then a 7/32 hex to begin threading these in place. Then on the 2 outside mounts that we pre-installed, you'll be using more of those flange head 8mm bolts to secure those in place. These are again just threading into factory threaded holes here on the frame, so it's just a matter of lining these up and getting them started. Then lastly, you can install this final inside mount here to these 2 inside flanges, tying both skid sections together and then fastening them to the frame. Now on the bottom, this is very much like the previous mounts. It's going to sit inside of these flanges and install using those 1/2-inch button head bolts. At the top, there's a cross member that's a little bit hard to see and access for video purposes, so I want to just kind of walk you through the hardware and how that goes up there. Basically, you're going to be installing a 3/8 hex head bolt with a washer through the bottom of this mounting bracket. And then up top, you're going to have the cross member here. Above that cross member, you'll need to drop in the square washer that we provide, followed by a flat washer and a 3/8 hex head bolt. So before I snake the bracket into place here, I'm going to take that square washer and slide it up on top of this cross member, and then just get it roughly lined up with the center of the large hole up there. I'm going to do the same thing with the flat washer, and then even the 3/8 nut I will place up there before that bracket goes into place. Now after that, I'll snake the bracket in alongside the drive shaft and up here into place. And then install those 1/2-inch button head bolts. Then you can reach up, lining up the top of this bracket, and install your 3/8 bolt with the washer. So now we have all our hardware loosely in place, and we can begin tightening things up. Now I would start with a 7/32 hex here on these 3/8 button heads to tighten these 2 skid halves together. And then you'll just need a 5/16 hex for all your 1/2-inch button head bolts. You'll need a 13 for all those 8mm hex head bolts, and a 9/16 for that 3/8 bolt here in the center. Now we understand that gaining access to this cross member here for this mid mount can be a little bit difficult. So if you choose to, or if you're having some difficulty here, you can always remove this factory drive shaft, even just one end, to allow that to drop down a little bit and give you just a little more access in there. Now if you choose to go that route, we're just going to recommend that you refer to manufacturer specs as far as torque specifications and hardware when you're getting that back installed. So once you have everything tight, your installation is complete. Now if you guys have any questions about this tank skid install or any other Victory product, you can always reach out to us. You can send us an email at info@victory4x4.com or give us a call at 269-459-8447.